Anxiety doesn't always scream. Sometimes it simply stays with you in silence, like a shadow that clings to your steps, like an invisible weight on your chest that won't go away, like a restlessness you can't explain. But that ruins everything without making a sound. You wake up with it. You go to bed with it. And in between, you pretend you're fine so you don't upset anyone. You smile while everything inside you is falling apart. You've lived entire days without truly being present. Conversations you weren't in, laughter you didn't feel, moments that slipped away completely because your mind wasn't here. It was there, anticipating everything that could go wrong, imagining scenarios that don't even exist, but are already stealing your peace. Has that ever happened to you? That's the prison. And the cruelest thing about that prison is that it has no visible bars. It's made of thoughts, of judgments, of demands, of fears. And you can't just open a door and leave, because that door isn't outside, it's inside. No one tells you this clearly. Anxiety isn't a monster that comes from the outside. It's an internal distortion that feeds on your own way of thinking. It's wanting to control everything. It's fearing what hasn't happened. It's punishing yourself for not feeling okay. It's a secret war you fight with yourself, and it hurts. It hurts because it can't be seen, because those around you ask you to relax, to not take things so seriously, to just think of something else, as if you hadn't tried that 1,000 times, as if you didn't know perfectly well that something isn't right, but you don't know where to start fixing it. Anxiety is not just a symptom. It's your soul crying out to be heard. It's your body begging you to stop. It's your mind asking for rest. It's your nervous system stuck in constant alert. It's a deep disconnection from the now, from your truth, from your body, from yourself. And the good news is you're not alone in this. Many are going through it. Many are hiding it. Many don't know there's another way. This space exists for that, to remind you there is a way out, to help you understand what's happening to you from an approach that doesn't judge, that doesn't pathologize everything, that doesn't cover up the symptom, but gets to the root. And that root is often philosophical, existential, emotional, spiritual. This is where Stoicism comes in, not as a cold doctrine, not as a list of pretty quotes, but as a real tool to return to your center, to train your mind not to react to every thought, to take back control of the only thing that has always been in your hands, your response. Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca. They spoke about this long before it was called anxiety. They knew that human suffering often comes from resisting the inevitable, from anticipating what hasn't happened, from judging feelings as if they were flaws. The Stoic doesn't run from fear. He looks at it, he listens to it, and he transforms it. So if you're here, it's not a coincidence. Maybe you've felt like something inside you broke, that you lost control, that you can't take it anymore, that no one understands you, that you don't know how to keep going without feeling like there's a storm inside you. But let me tell you something, you are much closer to freedom than you think. Not because everything will be fixed overnight, but because you're starting to look inward with honesty. And that, in a world that hides everything, that distracts everything, that denies everything, that is an act of courage. Today you're going to hear the truth no one tells you about your anxiety. And it won't be easy, because part of that truth means letting go of what you've believed about yourself until now, about your mind, about your story. But if you're willing to listen with an open heart, to allow yourself to feel without condemning yourself, to observe without reacting, then this path will be the beginning of something deep. We're going to walk through these 10 Stoic lessons together, each one designed to return your power, clarity, and calm. Not through perfection, but through daily practice. Because Stoicism isn't about not feeling. It's about not letting what you feel control you. It's about acting from reason, yes, but also from emotional wisdom, from temperance, from purpose. And if at any point you feel overwhelmed by what you hear, pause, breathe, and come back. This is not a race. It's a return to yourself, to your truth, to your center. Break your mental prison. not with force, with awareness. Before we begin, I want you to declare your commitment by leaving this in the comments. Starting today, my anxiety does not define my destiny. That phrase will be your reminder that you are here to reclaim control, not to live enslaved by fear. You're taking a step toward the inner freedom you've always deserved, toward a life where your thoughts no longer govern your peace. This is your moment to affirm yourself with courage and dignity, to stop hiding what you feel and begin to understand it. Without further delay, let's begin. Stoic. Lesson 1. Stop resisting the present. There are moments when your heart races for no apparent reason. Your chest tightens as if there were no air, even though you're surrounded by oxygen. Your mind starts rushing toward scenarios that don't exist, toward problems that haven't happened, but feel as real as if they were already unfolding. You tell yourself you're overreacting, that you shouldn't feel what you feel, that there's no reason. But anxiety doesn't ask, doesn't reason, doesn't justify itself. It simply arrives and devastates. That's how anxiety begins, not with a concrete event, but with anticipation, a what-if that becomes a prison. What if it doesn't work out? What if I mess up? What if they reject me? What if everything falls apart? That what-if is a seed that grows in silence, and before you know it, it has built walls around you. You can no longer enjoy the present because your mind is trapped in an uncertain future that consumes you. But this is where Stoicism reaches out its hand to you. Epictetus once said, "We are not disturbed by events, but by our opinion about them." That is, it's not the future that distresses you, it's how you interpret it, your need to control it, your inability to accept that it doesn't belong to you. Because the truth is this, the future is not in your hands. You can plan, strive, anticipate, prepare, but never control. And though that hurts, it is also liberating, because what is in your hands is your response to the present, and there lies your power. Anxiety grows when you fight against the inevitable, when you resist what is, when you tell yourself you shouldn't feel this, that you should already be okay, that you can't fail. That resistance is what feeds the fire. It turns a passing thought into a storm. Imagine you're in the ocean and a great wave is approaching. If you try to resist it, if you fight against it, it pulls you under. But if you flow with it, if you let yourself move with its force without stopping your swim, you survive. You even learn to surf it. That's how your mind works too. Anxiety doesn't go away because you ignore it, nor because you fight it with anger. It fades, or rather, transforms, when you accept it as part of the present moment. When instead of saying, "I shouldn't feel this," you say, "I am feeling this and that's okay." Acceptance is not resignation. It's not giving up. It's recognizing what is happening within you without judgment. It's sitting with your fear like someone sitting beside an uninvited guest who is already there anyway. You don't scream at it to leave. You observe it, you listen, and over time you lose the fear of its presence. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, wrote, "Remember that the present is all you have. Don't let it slip away." The present is your only battlefield. It is the only moment in which you can decide. The past is gone. The future hasn't arrived. The present is the only thing that exists. And yet, how many times do you ignore it? How many times do you live trapped in what hasn't happened yet? How often do you let your mind travel to places filled only with assumptions, catastrophes, and fears? You live as if your body were in one place, but your soul in another, divided, fragmented, without peace. Anxiety, then, is not your enemy. It's a signal, an alarm telling you that you've abandoned the present, that you're trying to control what isn't yours to control, that you're trying to live in the future before it arrives. And that is a form of suffering. This is why the Stoic path begins with a decision. Stop resisting the now. Yes, it may hurt. It may be uncomfortable. It may not be what you expected. But it's what is, and your task isn't to change it, but to transform yourself within it. Your task is to stop asking why you feel anxious and start asking what you're going to do with that anxiety. Will you keep denying it? Will you keep fearing it? Or will you sit with it like a wise person, observe it and learn from it? Because every time you choose to look at your anxiety without judgment, you are training a virtue. You are training patience, humility, self-mastery. You are strengthening the most powerful muscle of the Stoic, the ability to accept what does not depend on you and act courageously on what does. You don't need to stop feeling to be at peace. You only need to stop fighting what is already happening. When you stop resisting the present, something deep begins. A calm that doesn't depend on everything being okay, but on your ability to be present even when nothing is. And that, in this noisy, restless, anxious world, is a true revolution. Because while everyone is running to escape pain, you choose to feel it with dignity. While everyone gets tangled in fear of tomorrow, you choose to breathe in the now. While everyone tries to flee, you choose to remain. And that, perhaps, is the bravest act of all. Stoic Lesson 2. Your mind is not your enemy. When you live with anxiety, your worst battle is often not with the world, but with yourself. It's that silent war happening inside your mind, when your heart races for no clear reason, when one part of you begs for calm, and another screams that something is wrong. Most people don't talk about this. They keep it to themselves. They hide it, because they believe feeling anxious means being broken, because they've learned to see their own mind as an unpredictable enemy that must be controlled, silenced, or punished. But this is where Stoicism lights a torch in the dark. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to us that harms us, but our opinion about it." And the same applies to what happens inside you. It's not anxiety that destroys you, it's what you believe it means about you. You've learned to fear your emotions, to think that if something feels wrong, then you must be wrong. That if panic overwhelms you, it's because you're weak. That if you think too much, it's because something in you is broken. But that's not true. Anxiety is not a flaw, it's a signal. It's the way your body and mind tell you that something needs to be seen. That something inside you is asking for attention, presence, awareness. Not control, not punishment, but understanding. Imagine for a moment that you're standing in front of a child crying desperately because something hurts. Would you look at them with contempt? Would you yell at them to shut up? Would you say they don't have the right to feel that way? Of course not. So why do you do that to yourself? Why every time anxiety shows up, do you insult yourself mentally? Why do you keep repeating, "I should be fine," or "here I go again exaggerating," or "no one will love me like this"? Why do you turn your distress into shame instead of seeing it as a cry for help? Stoicism doesn't ask you to deny what you feel. On the contrary, it invites you to observe it without judgment, to become aware of your mind not as an enemy, but as a powerful tool that needs to be guided, not suppressed. Marcus Aurelius said, "The mind adapts and transforms every obstacle into its purpose." That includes anxiety. Every time you feel overwhelmed by your thoughts, remember this: you are not your thoughts. You can have anxious thoughts without being a weak person. You can feel intense fear without being incapable. You can feel like you're losing control without having lost your strength. The difference between the wise and the emotionally enslaved is not in what they feel, but in how they relate to what they feel. The wise one observes their thoughts like clouds crossing the sky. Some are grey, heavy, stormy. Others are light, white, fleeting. But none of them define the sky. None define the soul that observes them. You are not the cloud. You are the sky that holds it. When you create this inner distance, something shifts. Anxiety doesn't magically disappear, but it stops having so much power over you, because you no longer see it as a monster, but as a part of yourself that needs to be heard. And when you listen to it, you discover that behind every racing thought, there's an unmet need. Maybe it's fear of rejection, maybe it's emotional exhaustion, maybe it's unresolved grief, an unfulfilled dream, a love that never was. Whatever it is, it's there. And as long as you ignore it, it will keep speaking to you in the language of anxiety. That's why this lesson is an invitation to reconcile with yourself, to stop treating your mind like an enemy that must be subdued, and start treating it as sacred ground that deserves respect. You are not broken. You are learning to understand yourself. And yes, that path may be slow, painful too, but it is a path home, back to your center, back to your truth. Not every thought that crosses your mind is true. Not every emotion you feel defines you. Not every story you tell yourself deserves to be believed. The Stoic trains in the discipline of discernment, of choosing which thoughts to feed and which to let go, of standing firm in their center even when the inner storm feels unbearable. Do you want to stop suffering so much from your anxiety? Then stop fighting it. Observe it. Listen to it. Ask it, what are you trying to show me today? Because that inner voice doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to teach you. It wants you to look inward, to heal. And if you're willing to do that work, to walk alongside yourself without judgment, to offer yourself compassion instead of criticism, then, little by little, you'll stop being afraid of your mind. Not because the pain disappears, but because you'll learn to carry it with dignity. That is the difference between living in fear and living in freedom. Stoic Lesson 3. The future does not deserve your slavery. Anxiety has a favorite hiding place, the future, and when it takes over, that place becomes an invisible prison, one in which you hold the key. It's not the present that suffocates you, it's the mental script of what could happen. It's not reality that crushes you, it's the movie you keep projecting in your mind, over and over, where everything ends badly. Has it ever happened to you? You feel fine for a moment, and suddenly your mind interrupts with a future scene full of chaos, rejection, failure, or pain. Your body reacts as if it were happening right now, and even though nothing has occurred, you're already sweating, trembling, heart racing, soul shrinking. That is anxiety, living with your soul trapped in a time that doesn't exist. And yet, you treat it as if it were more real than the ground beneath your feet. Marcus Aurelius said it clearly, do not let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you must, with the same reason that supports you today. But we forget. We convince ourselves that expecting the worst protects us, that imagining every possible scenario prepares us, that if we plan every detail, every conversation, every mistake, we can avoid suffering. But no, all we end up doing is living it twice, once in the mind, once in real life, if it ever happens at all. Stoicism doesn't tell you to ignore the future. It tells you not to become enslaved by it. The future is useful only when you use it as a compass, not as a prison. Anxiety wants to keep you there. The Stoic reminds you to return here, because only in the present can you breathe, only in the present can you choose, only in the present can you live. And yet, we leave, all the time, to that dreaded what if. What if they reject me? What if I fail? What if I get sick? What if I lose everything? What if it never works out? That what if isn't a question, it's a chain. Epictetus taught that there are only two domains that truly exist, what depends on you and what does not. And the future, no matter how hard you try, does not depend on you. It depends on 1,000 variables beyond your control. The weather, other people's choices, randomness, time, your body, life itself. So why carry a weight you can't lift? The wise one releases what they do not govern, and focuses their energy on the only thing they do have in their hands, the present moment. But it's not easy, I know, especially if you grew up believing that control equals safety, that planning the unpredictable shields you from fear, that foreseeing every disaster proves your strength. But it doesn't. It only keeps you living in constant alarm. Treating tomorrow like an enemy, turning your intelligence into an executioner who won't let you sleep. Anxiety isn't dissolved by imagining happy endings. It is calmed by training your attention to return again and again to the now. Because when you are fully in the now, the future loses its grip. You stop inventing problems that don't exist and begin to breathe in what is happening, not what you fear might happen. Do you feel safe here, or has your mind already run off to a potential conflict, a debt, an argument, a failure? Bring it back. How? Feel your feet on the floor. Observe your breath. Listen to the sounds around you. Name 3 things you can see. Remember, you are here, not there, here. Seneca said, anticipated suffering is greater than real suffering. And he was right. 90% of what you fear never happens, but you still suffer, as if it were real. As if your thoughts had the power to shape destiny. They don't. They only have the power to poison your experience of the present, if you let them. When you live in the future, you're running from the only place where you can change your life, the now. The Stoic is not irresponsible. He plans, foresees, organizes. But then he lets go. He doesn't repeat endlessly what he's already prepared. He doesn't dramatize what hasn't happened. He doesn't drown in his own head, because he understands that life happens here, and that peace is found where your feet are, not where your fears are. Today, I invite you to practice this. Every time your mind shoots off into the future, pause, breathe, return. Remember that the movie playing isn't real. It's just a projection, and you're not the actor enslaved by the script. You're the director. You can cut the scene. You can stop the take. You can choose. Your freedom doesn't begin when everything gets resolved. It begins when you realize you can stop anticipating disaster and start trusting your ability to face it if it comes. That trust is not naive. It is the result of having lived through mental hell many times and still being here, breathing, walking, living. Do not underestimate that power. The future does not deserve your slavery. Your soul was made to walk free, not to crawl through the dark corridors of what hasn't happened. So today, return to yourself, to your breath, to your truth, to your now. Stoic. Lesson 4. Anxiety grows with judgment. Most of the time, it's not anxiety itself that hurts you the most. It's the way you judge yourself for feeling it. You feel a tightness in your chest, a lump in your throat, a wave of fear, and instead of offering yourself compassion, you punish yourself. You tell yourself something's wrong with you, that you should be stronger, that you should have gotten over this by now, that you don't understand why, again, why you, why now. It's not just anxiety, it's guilt, it's shame, it's self-rejection for not being okay, and without realizing it, you double your pain. First comes the fear, the restlessness, the insecurity. Then appears your inner voice, the one that learned to be harsh, impatient, merciless. And that voice doesn't help, it condemns, it doesn't heal, it humiliates. Again, you sound like a scared child. When will you grow up? You're overreacting. Words no one told you today, but that you keep repeating to yourself with cruelty. And in that echo of judgment, anxiety feeds, it grows, it settles in. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to us that harms us, but our opinion about it." And that includes what we think about what we feel. The emotion itself isn't the problem, it's your interpretation, it's the label, it's the belief that feeling anxious means you've failed. But tell me honestly, who told you that feeling bad makes you weak? At what point did you accept that your worth as a human being depends on your emotional state? Who taught you that if you're not calm all the time, then you're broken? Because that's not Stoicism. That's self-demand dressed as discipline. The Stoic doesn't flog himself for feeling. He's not ashamed of his emotions. He looks them in the eye, he questions them, and turns them into a path of growth. Marcus Aurelius, in the midst of wars, betrayals, and illness, wrote in his journal, "If it's bearable, I bear it. If it's not, I withdraw with dignity." But he never said, "If I feel fear, I am less." He never wrote, "If anxiety overwhelms me, I have failed." Why do you? At what point did you become your harshest judge? When did you stop treating yourself as someone valuable who is suffering and start treating yourself like someone defective who's in the way? What's hurting you today doesn't need punishment. It needs understanding. It needs pause. It needs the same respect you'd give someone else if they came to you on the verge of collapse. Would you tell an anxious friend they're a human failure? Would you yell at them to shut up, pull themselves together, stop being annoying? No, right? Then why do you do it to yourself? Seneca taught that overflowing emotions aren't controlled by shouting, but by reason and patience. But he also said that no one heals by treating themselves as an enemy. You are not your enemy. You are someone with wounds, with a story, with memories that left marks, with experiences that shaped sensitivities, and with a mind that sometimes races because it learned to stay alert to protect you. Does that make you weak? No, it makes you human. And the first step to diffusing anxiety is not to control it. It's to stop judging yourself for having it. It's to look at yourself with gentleness, with respect, with the nobility of someone who understands that feeling is not a betrayal of strength. It is the doorway to transformation. Want to start changing your relationship with anxiety? Stop calling yourself anxious as if it were your identity. Stop saying, "I'm just like this." Stop assuming that feeling this way is a punishment you deserve. Start saying, "I'm moving through a difficult emotion. I'm learning to hold myself steady when everything shakes. I'm training my mind to be my ally, not my jailer." That is Stoicism, not repression, not pretending it doesn't hurt, but standing your ground without losing yourself, feeling without destroying yourself, and moving forward even when your inner world is clouded. Anxiety is a visitor, not an owner, and the judgments you attach to it are like fuel to the fire. But you can stop feeding that fire. You can choose to observe without condemnation, to sit with yourself in the middle of the storm and say, "I will not abandon myself." Because that's what has hurt you the most, hasn't it? That you have abandoned yourself so many times, that in the face of pain, instead of embracing yourself, you attacked. That instead of being your refuge, you became your executioner. No more. Today, here, now, you can choose differently. You can stop fighting yourself and start becoming your most loyal ally. Stoicism is not a cold doctrine. It's a way of life that reminds you everything begins within, that your mind can be a prison or a temple, and you choose each day which it will be. Anxiety calms when you stop judging it, when you stop piling on layers of shame, reproach, and pressure. Anxiety doesn't leave when you insult it. It softens when you understand it. When you disarm it with compassion, when you sit beside yourself and instead of saying, "I'm so weak," you say, "I'm here and I won't let go of myself." That is true strength. That is the medicine that soothes the soul. Stoic lesson 5. Your control begins in the body. Anxiety doesn't begin in your thoughts. It begins in your breath, in your tense shoulders, in your clenched jaw, in that knot in your stomach that's been with you since you woke up without knowing why. But because no one taught you how to read the body's signals, you believe the problem is only in your mind. That's what you were taught, that if you're anxious, you need to think differently. Change your mindset. Control your thoughts. And yes, the mind is essential, but you can't try to clear the sky when the ground beneath you is shaking. Your body is your first frontier, and anxiety always crosses it first. Before you rationalize it, you're already feeling it in your racing heartbeat. Before you understand it, it has already settled in your chest, and yet you ignore it. You go on with your routine, breathing halfway, neck stiff, jaw tight from holding in everything you don't say, and silently it grows. You ask yourself, why do I feel this way? And the answer isn't always a repressed emotion or unresolved trauma. Sometimes it's just that you haven't slept well in weeks. You're not drinking water. You eat fast and without pause. You don't move. Your body has been in survival mode, and you haven't even noticed. Epictetus said, "No man becomes a slave to his passions unless he has first neglected himself." And you unknowingly have neglected yourself. not out of irresponsibility, but out of ignorance. Because no one told you that your body is not just a vehicle for your mind, it's a sacred channel, a map of your inner state, a mirror of your chaos or your peace. The ancient Stoics knew this. They weren't just philosophers, they were practitioners of a complete art of living. They trained the mind, yes, but also the body. They slept frugally, they fasted, they walked, they breathed with intention, because they understood something you may have forgotten. Your body is where you live, and you cannot have peace in your life if you are living inside a body that only receives tension. When you breathe poorly, you think poorly. When you don't sleep, you don't decide well. When you live in tension, you react instead of respond. When you don't inhabit your body, anxiety takes control. Want to regain power over yourself? Start with something as simple as inhaling and exhaling. Do it right now, not to calm down, but to reconnect, because you've gone hours, maybe days, without remembering that you are here now, alive. Close your eyes. Feel the air come in. Feel the air go out. Do it not as a technique, but as an act of love. The great sages knew this. He who breathes deeply thinks deeply, and he who inhabits himself governs himself. Seneca said, "We cannot flee from ourselves. All we can do is inhabit our being with greater presence." And inhabiting yourself begins with the body. When you have anxiety, your body is on constant alert, and if you don't interrupt it, it stays there. Because your nervous system doesn't understand concepts, it understands experiences. You can't say, "I'm fine." If your breath is screaming, run. The body needs real signals to deactivate its alarm, and you can give them. How? By moving every day, even just for 10 minutes. By caring for what you eat, not for aesthetics, but for energy. By taking pauses. By breathing as if your life depended on it, because it does. By sleeping as if you were important, because you are. By learning to relax without guilt. By stopping the race to prove your worth through productivity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The art of living is more like wrestling than dancing, because it requires being firm and ready, even against yourself." And you've been fighting your body for years, pushing it, forcing it, ignoring it, and then you're surprised that it's at war. But today you can choose differently. You can make your body your ally. You can learn to read it, to respect it, to ask it, "What do you need?" and listen without judgment. Your body is not the enemy, it's the messenger, and when you ignore it, it screams. But when you tend to it, it calms down. Anxiety doesn't go away with affirmations alone, nor with pretty quotes, nor with trying to think positively. Anxiety needs a foundation, a firm root, an inner home where not everything is on fire, and that home begins in the body. Drink water as if watering a sacred plant. Breathe as if you were a being worthy of oxygen and rest. Move as someone who honors the life they have. And treat your body as you would a frightened child, with patience, presence, and tenderness. Because the more you ignore it, the more it will do to get your attention. And you don't need another crisis to understand that. You just need to listen now. The Stoic doesn't wait to collapse in order to change. He anticipates, he observes, and he acts. Today, start with the basics, with what's most humble, with what's most powerful. Your body. Feeling anxiety doesn't mean you're broken. It simply reveals that there's a part of you crying out to be heard. If you've ever grown tired of silently battling thoughts no one understands, subscribing may seem like a small act. But for us, it's an act of courage. It allows us to keep building this space of calm and clarity for minds that need a breath. Here, we don't judge you for feeling. We teach you how to understand yourself with compassion. To live with less fear and more strength. Your anxiety is not your end. It is the beginning of your path toward peace. Stoic lesson. 6. You are not your anxiety. You've said it many times. I'm anxious. I have anxiety. I'm broken. and without realizing it, you became one with your wound. You turned a symptom into an identity, a temporary state into a permanent label, an emotion into a life sentence. But who would you be if you stopped defining yourself by it? Anxiety is not you. It's a part of you asking to be seen, not something you should condemn yourself for. It's not a flaw in your system. It's a reaction, a signal, a cry for help that's been misinterpreted. Epictetus said it clearly. It's not things themselves that disturb us, but the opinions we have about them. And you've spent years having the wrong opinions about yourself, telling yourself quietly or even in silence that you are defective, that others can, but you can't, that you feel too much, think too hard, react wrong. You believed it so much that you started to see yourself as a problem, as someone who bothers, who overwhelms, who's always a burden to others. And so the pain wasn't just emotional, it became existential. But the Stoic does not accept identities that chain him. He accepts his humanity, yes, but he does not marry his falls. You can feel anxiety without being an anxious person. You can feel fear without being a coward. You can have dark days without being darkness. Do you know what the wise do? They separate from what they feel, not to repress it, but to observe it. Marcus Aurelius, in the midst of wars and illness, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That thought became practice, because anxiety is an internal event that feels external, and the more you name it as me, the deeper you sink. When you say, "I'm unwell," your mind believes it. But if you say, "Today my body is restless. Today my mind is racing. Today I feel anxiety, but I am not anxiety," everything shifts, because you've reclaimed your position as the observer. You've returned to the place you were never meant to leave, the inner space where you can witness your experience without becoming it. Seneca taught that the wise man is like a physician. He's not frightened by symptoms. He examines them. Your anxiety is not a life sentence. It's a call to presence, an opportunity for self-knowledge, a fertile ground to train your virtue, but only if you stop fighting it like an enemy, only if you stop seeing yourself as broken. You are not broken. You are in process, and your process, though hard, is noble, because the one who has stared into the abyss can build a strength others will never know. The one who has wrestled with their mind can forge a peace deeper than any external comfort. But it all begins with one decision. Stop identifying with your anxiety. And it's not easy, I know. Sometimes it's been with you for so long that you've made room for it like it belongs in your home. You know fear better than calm. Anxiety feels more familiar than peace. But you can choose again. You can return to yourself. Not the anxious you, but the you who observes, who breathes, who doesn't give up. Stoicism doesn't promise you a life without anxiety. It promises you a life where you are stronger than it, where you can live with your symptoms without letting them define you, where you can move through noise without forgetting your center, where you can see your shadows without hiding your light. And how do you train that? With practice, with repetition, with presence. Each time you breathe deeply when your mind races, each time you don't run from yourself, each time you don't call yourself defective for having a hard day, you are reaffirming that you are not your anxiety. You are the space where it happens, and that gives you power. Epictetus said, "You are a soul carrying a body, not a body burdened with anguish." But in this fast world full of labels, you forgot your essence. You became your diagnosis, your symptoms, your social media tags, but you are not a clinical summary. You are a human being, capable of observing, transforming, and breathing. Ask yourself today, who would I be if I didn't define myself by what hurts? The answer won't come immediately, but it will come, and when it does, it will set you free. Remember this, you are more than what you feel, far more than what you fear. Infinitely more than what you've believed yourself to be. Your anxiety is a visitor, not the owner of your house. Don't feed it with your identity. Don't make it part of your name. Don't defend it as if it belongs to you. Just observe it, listen to it, and then let it go. Because you can feel anxiety and still speak with calm. You can feel fear and still move forward. You can be hurt and still be wise. Don't wait to be perfect to be free. Freedom begins the moment you stop judging yourself for not being perfect. And that does depend on you. Stoic Lesson 7. Choose your mental battles. Not every thought deserves your energy. Not every emotion needs a response. Not every mental war is worth fighting, but you only discover that too late, don't you? After wearing yourself out fighting monsters you created, after losing countless nights repeating the same fears, after arguing with yourself for hours, and nothing changes. No one ever taught you to question the battle before entering it. They just told you, if you feel anxious, get rid of it. If a negative thought shows up, correct it. If something bothers you, you must fix it. But not everything can be fixed. Not everything can be solved. And many times the wisest move is to let go. The anxious mind wants to close everything left open. It wants to understand, to anticipate, to protect. And it does that by generating thoughts. Thousands, uncontrollable, cyclical. You think something, it creates fear. That fear creates more thoughts. Those thoughts make you doubt yourself. And that doubt makes you think even more, until you no longer know if what you feel is real, or just a distorted echo inside a tired mind. Marcus Aurelius said, "If the pain is bearable, you endure it. If it's unbearable, it will carry you away. In either case, there's no need to worry." It sounds simple, and it is. But it's not easy, because for someone with anxiety, worrying is a way of existing. It's how they say, "I care, I'm afraid, I want to avoid pain." But worrying has never prevented anything. It has only caused more suffering. This is where Stoicism enters, like sword and shield, not to cut your thoughts off, but to help you wisely choose which ones deserve your attention. Epictetus taught it clearly. We are not disturbed by events, but by the view we take of them. So, what's the view you take? What's the inner narrative you keep repeating? Aren't your thoughts the ones draining you the most? It's not what happens outside, it's what you build on the inside. An ambiguous look from someone becomes, "They're mad at me." A physical sensation turns into, "What if it's something serious?" An unanswered message becomes, "They're avoiding me, they don't care anymore." But what if that's not true? What if most of your mental battles are just fog? I know, it's hard, because anxiety speaks convincingly. It sounds logical, it sounds urgent, but it's not always true. That's where the Stoic steps back. He doesn't identify with every thought. He observes, questions, reevaluates, and if the thought brings no peace or direction, he lets it pass. Seneca said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And you know this. How many times did your mind show you the worst-case scenario, and it never happened? How many times did you suffer in advance, tormented by things that only existed in your head? Does that make you weak? Number. It makes you human. But a human being also has the ability to train focus, to stop responding automatically, to create space between stimulus and reaction. That pause, that instant of awareness, is where your freedom is born. It's not about fighting anxiety like it's your enemy. It's about discernment, about looking a thought in the eye and asking, does this serve me? Does this help me take action? Does this bring clarity? If the answer is no, don't follow it. Don't feed it. Don't open the door to it. A thought is just a spark, but you decide whether to turn it into a wildfire. Often, your mind replays old stories, unhealed wounds, learned fears, experiences that shaped your nervous system, and you react with your body. Not realizing the danger has already passed, that's when the Stoic breathes. He remembers reality is here now, that not everything needs to be resolved, only disidentified from. Ask yourself this, how much of what I think is even real? And if you don't know, pause. Don't act from confusion. Don't make decisions in a storm. The anxious mind calms down when it stops being fed, when you stop fighting everything, when you choose which thoughts deserve your attention, when you don't step into every battlefield your mind creates. You don't need to be right. You don't need to understand everything. You don't need to fix every emotion. You just need to return to yourself, to breathe, to guard your inner space like a sacred temple. And to remember, silence is also an answer. Calm is also power, and conscious choice is freedom. Because the wise man is not the one who never feels anxiety. He is the one who knows which mental battles are not worth fighting. Stoic Lesson 8. Anxiety calms with purpose. Have you noticed that the most intense moments of anxiety tend to appear when your life feels adrift? When you're not sure where you're going, when you wake up without a clear reason, when you do things out of habit, pressure, or need, but not out of conviction. That's when anxiety sneaks in, quietly at first, like mild discomfort, like a question with no answer. And then, without warning, it becomes a weight in your chest, a constant noise, a feeling of being trapped inside yourself. The soul does not tolerate emptiness, and when you lack clear direction, fear rushes in to fill the void. Fear of the future, fear of failure, fear of not being enough, of staying stuck or worse, moving toward a life you never wanted. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the human soul becomes invincible when aligned with its purpose. He wasn't talking about a dream job or grand ambitions. He was talking about having a why, an internal reason that gives shape to your days and meaning to your pain. When you have a deep reason to wake up each morning, anxiety no longer finds the same fertile ground to grow. You're no longer destroyed by every challenge, because something within you is stronger than fear. Purpose becomes your compass, and when the path is dark, you don't need the whole map, just clarity about your next step. Anxiety, many times, is your soul shouting that you're living out of alignment, working in something you don't love, relating out of fear, suppressing your voice, answering to others' expectations while ignoring your own needs. The Stoic doesn't chase perfection. He seeks direction. He doesn't need to have everything figured out or know how his story ends. He's content to move toward what he finds valuable, even if it's slow, even if it hurts, even without immediate results. Epictetus said, "It's not the load that breaks you, but the way you carry it. And if your load isn't connected to your inner meaning, it becomes a prison. But if it's aligned with purpose, even the heaviest weight becomes training." That's why the first step in calming your anxiety isn't getting rid of it. It's understanding what it's trying to say. Is there a part of your life you're postponing out of fear? Are you living to please instead of building what truly matters to you? Are you chasing what you should do while abandoning what brings you peace? Don't blame yourself for not having all the answers. But don't settle for a life without meaning either. The Stoic stops, observes, and asks with brutal honesty, what hurts? What do I desire? What am I avoiding? And from those questions he chooses to act. Small steps, yes, but with direction, with intention, with soul. This isn't about becoming productive, it's about becoming present. Present in your decisions, present in your journey. Because nothing brings more peace than knowing that, despite the chaos outside, you're walking toward what your heart recognizes as truth. Seneca put it simply, if you don't know which port you're sailing to, no wind is favorable. Your anxiety won't calm with distractions or with empty promises. It will calm when you take the wheel of your life and start sailing, even if you're in the middle of the storm. Purpose doesn't mean being fearless, it means moving forward in spite of fear, because something greater is calling you, something deeper than anxiety, an inner voice that says, this is the way. And even if the path isn't easy, it's yours. So stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for everything to be clear before you move. Purpose is not found by thinking, it is found by walking, by failing, adjusting, and trying again, but always with the will to live with meaning. Anxiety calms when your life stops going in circles and begins to move in a straight line toward what matters. You don't need to run, you just need to move. One step, one decision, one act of courage a day. And with that, fear becomes fuel, emptiness becomes space to create. And your mind, instead of chasing you, starts walking beside you. The Stoic doesn't wait to feel secure before acting. He acts to build his own security, and in that process he finds a peace no external result could ever offer, because he no longer runs away. He no longer betrays himself. He no longer lives to serve fear. He lives to serve his truth. Stoic Lesson 9. Silence is medicine. We live in a world that doesn't know how to be quiet. Everything screams, everything interrupts, everything demands attention. The phone vibrates before the sun rises. Messages pile up. Social media competes for a glimpse of your soul. And when you finally sit in silence, the loudest thing of all appears: your mind. It's no coincidence that anxiety grows in a society saturated with noise. An anxious mind is like a messy room. You don't know where to look. Everything feels urgent, and what truly matters gets buried under layers of chaos. Marcus Aurelius, in the midst of the chaos of the Roman Empire, found peace in the practice of inner silence. While commanding armies and facing betrayal, he wrote in his meditations, "Withdraw into yourself, there you will find the source of all good." The most powerful emperor of his time knew that without silence there is no clarity, and without clarity there is no freedom. Silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of awareness. It's the space where you stop reacting and begin observing, where, finally, you can hear yourself without filters. But reaching that space isn't easy, because in silence, not only peace appears, your fears appear too. The thoughts you avoid, the truths you've buried under productivity, the questions you don't want to answer. That's why most people run from silence. They replace it with loud music, constant notifications, and shallow conversations, because being alone with yourself requires courage, the courage to hold your own gaze. Seneca warned, "The more external noise you need, the deeper the internal noise you carry." And he wasn't just talking about the environment, he was referring to that inner tremble that keeps us from resting. That tremble we often confuse with being active, busy, or connected. But what would happen if you stopped? If you turned off your phone for 1 hour? If you walked without music? If you sat with yourself, doing absolutely nothing? What would you find there? The Stoic doesn't fear the answer. He seeks it. He needs it. Because he knows that only in silence can he identify the root of his anxiety, and by seeing it clearly he can choose not to feed it anymore. The mind needs empty spaces to organize itself. It's like a glass of muddy water. If you leave it still, the dirt settles and the water clears. But if you keep shaking it, you'll never see the bottom. That's how it is with you. If you never give yourself silence, you won't know what really hurts. You'll only feel confusion, and confusion is fertile ground for anxiety. In silence, you discover that not every thought is true, that not every emotion must be obeyed, that you can look at fear without running, that you can hear your insecurity without making it your identity. Stoic philosophy is a practice of clarity. And clarity doesn't come from doing more. It comes from removing what doesn't serve, the judgment you repeat, the comparisons that trap you, the external voices you've adopted as your own. Epictetus taught that no one can disturb your soul unless you allow them. But to realize what you're allowing in, you must pause. You need silence. I'm not talking about heading to the desert or doing a week-long spiritual retreat. I'm talking about 5 minutes. 5 minutes to close your eyes, breathe, and do nothing else. 5 minutes to look inward without judgment. 5 minutes to reclaim control over your attention, your most valuable resource. Maybe it'll be hard. Maybe at first you'll feel discomfort, boredom, the urge to be productive. But if you persist, you'll begin to notice something extraordinary. Your mind calms down. Your thoughts become clearer. Your body lowers its guard, and something inside you that you didn't even know was so tired starts to rest. Because silence isn't just clarity, it's also rest. Rest from the noise, from the I have to, from the I'm not enough, from the I should be someone else. In silence, you stop fighting yourself. And that inner truce is the beginning of a purposeful life. The Stoic doesn't aim to silence the world around him. He seeks to become so strong within that the noise no longer controls him. And that strength isn't found in reaction, but in pause, in conscious breath, in the space between stimulus and response. Right there is your power. So today, I invite you to reclaim silence as a tool for healing, not as punishment, not as isolation, but as refuge, as the place where you return to yourself. Do it through small gestures. Before you respond, breathe. Before you speak, listen. Before you judge yourself, sit with yourself. Maybe there you'll discover that you weren't as broken as you thought, that you don't need all the answers, just more presence. And that beneath the fear, the anxiety, and the urgency, there is a soul that simply needed space to breathe. Silence is medicine, and like all medicine, it takes discipline to work. But if you take it daily, even in small doses, your mind will begin to change. Your body will stop being on constant alert, and your spirit will remember it didn't come to this world to run without direction, but to walk with awareness. Marcus Aurelius, in one of his most intimate meditations, wrote, "A calm soul is life in its purest state." He didn't say that as a poet. He said it as an emperor who understood the power of stopping. Do the same, because in a world of noise, silence isn't just an act of rebellion, it's an act of self-love. Stoic Lesson 10, you don't heal alone. For a long time you believed you had to handle everything on your own, that showing your pain was a sign of weakness, that asking for help made you less strong. And so, in silence, you carried a weight that was never just yours, the anxiety, the shame, the guilt of not being okay. You became your own judge, jailer, and executioner, but never your own ally. How many times have you told yourself, I have to overcome this alone? How many times have you smiled while screaming on the inside? How many times have you pretended everything was fine just to avoid making others uncomfortable? Society taught you that self-sufficiency is a virtue. And yes, it is, but only when it doesn't become isolation. Because there's a very fine line between being strong and living locked inside your own armor. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, wrote his reflections not to boast, but to stay grounded. He knew that his mind, as powerful as it was not immune to chaos. And he wasn't afraid to admit it. He wasn't afraid to show his humanity. That didn't make him weak, it made him real. Anxiety grows in the shadows of isolation. It convinces you that no one would understand, that you shouldn't feel this way, that if you share it, they'll think you're broken. So you stay silent, and in that silence, anxiety finds the perfect ground to grow wild and tangled. But Stoicism is not synonymous with loneliness. It's not about locking yourself away until you break. It's about learning to master yourself, yes, but also knowing when you need another's hand, because asking for help does not take you away from virtue. It brings you closer to it. Seneca said that wisdom also lies in seeking good counselors. And he wasn't just referring to philosophers or emperors. He meant anyone who has walked through fire and emerged transformed. Speaking with someone who has felt what you're feeling can save you more than 1,000 books. You don't heal alone. You heal in community. You heal when you stop pretending everything is under control. You heal when you allow yourself to be seen in your fragility, and instead of judgment, you receive understanding. And then you realize you weren't weak. You were just tired of resisting so much in silence. The Stoic does not abandon himself. And part of not abandoning yourself is not isolating. It is accepting that no matter how wise you are still human. And humans heal together. Maybe you think, but no one can feel what I feel. And you might be right. Your story is unique, but your pain isn't. Others have felt that knot in the chest, that shapeless fear, that endless night. And some of them have learned how to navigate it. Those people exist. They're in books, in spaces like this one, in communities that, like ours, don't judge your shadow. They illuminate the path so you can walk through it. You are not alone. And if it's still hard to believe it, I'll say it again. You are not alone. Every time someone listens to these words and feels understood, a door opens. Every time you leave a comment saying, "I feel the same," another human breathes easier, no longer feeling so isolated. Every time you share your story without filters, someone out there silently thanks you. Stoicism is community. It's learning together, falling and rising with others. It's remembering that virtue isn't cultivated in ivory towers, but in the shared mud of our wounds. When you choose to walk with others, you don't just strengthen yourself, you strengthen them too, because your process also inspires. Your struggle, even if it seems small, might be the beacon someone else needs not to give up. You don't need to shout your story to the world, but you do deserve someone who listens, someone who doesn't want to fix you, but simply sits with you as you find your center. Epictetus taught that nothing external can harm you unless you allow it. But he also hinted that true strength lies in using reason. And part of reason is recognizing when you've reached your limit. And that's okay. Saying "I need help" doesn't make you less stoic, it makes you wiser. Do it for yourself. Do it for those who still don't dare. Do it because you deserve relief, not punishment. Companionship, not loneliness. Understanding, not judgment. And if that step still feels too big, start here, with us, with this community. Leave your message, your story, your silence turned into words. Let this space be more than just a voice you listen to. Let it be a place where you belong. A refuge where Stoicism is not just theory, but daily practice. Where every episode reminds you that enduring is not the same as isolating, and that healing is not forgetting pain, but walking through it with others. You don't heal alone. You heal with love, with truth, with others who have felt what you're feeling now. And in that connection, in that shared humanity, anxiety loses strength. And you at last regain yours. Maybe no one has ever told you this before, but you need to hear it. You are not broken, even if it sometimes feels that way. You are not weak for having anxiety. You are not failing because you feel afraid. You are not less because you can't control everything happening inside you. You're just tired. Tired of fighting in silence. Tired of putting on a brave face while your mind is screaming. Tired of pretending to be fine so you don't worry others. Tired of being strong when what you really need is a hug, a breath, a truce. And if you've made it this far, it's not by chance. It's because somewhere inside you, something hasn't given up yet. A spark that, despite everything, is still lit. A deep desire to heal, to understand yourself, to live with more peace. Maybe no one taught you how to be with yourself. They taught you to perform, to produce, to endure, to pretend. But they never taught you how to sit with your emotions without judging them. They never taught you that pain is also part of the journey. And even less that having anxiety doesn't make you less human. It makes you precisely that, human. Throughout this episode, we didn't try to give you magical solutions. We didn't come to tell you, do this, and your anxiety will disappear forever. That would be a lie disguised as a promise. Because the truth no one tells you about your anxiety is that it's not about eradicating it, but learning to live with it, without letting it rule your life. Anxiety doesn't disappear through brute force. It doesn't get drowned by distractions. It doesn't heal by ignoring it. It transforms. It softens. It is heard. And that's what we've done here together. Listened to it without fear. Looked it in the eye. Understood that that trembling voice inside you is not your enemy. It is your wounded part asking for attention. It is your story piled up into a knot. It is your soul asking you to come home. Stoicism doesn't promise that you'll stop feeling, but it does train you not to be dragged by every emotion. It invites you to observe your mind not as an enemy, but as a landscape to understand. It reminds you that serenity is not the absence of storm, but the presence of balance. And that balance isn't found out there. It doesn't come from a partner, a job, an achievement or validation. It lies in your ability to return to the present, to breathe without guilt, to choose thoughts that support you, not destroy you, to stop fighting yourself. Today you took an important step. You sat down to look inward. You didn't run from your anxiety. You started to understand it. You stopped hiding what you feel and began to honor it. Maybe tomorrow the anxiety will return. Maybe tonight you'll have trouble sleeping. Maybe you'll relapse, and that's okay. Healing is not linear. Growth is not a staircase upward. It's a path full of curves, pauses, setbacks, and progress that sometimes go unnoticed, but still matter. Every conscious breath, every moment of presence, every time you choose not to insult yourself for feeling, all of that is part of your healing. And if this session brought you peace, clarity, or simply made you feel less alone, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribing to this space is much more than supporting a podcast. It's declaring that your mental health matters, that you want to keep learning, growing, understanding. It's becoming part of a community that doesn't ask you to be perfect, just real. A community that breathes with you, that doesn't judge you, that hugs you without touching you. Each new episode is a reminder that you are not alone, that you can be strong without becoming hardened, that your anxiety is not the end, but the beginning of a new way of living. And if you choose not to continue on this path, we understand, but we also know what you'd miss. Reflections that might save you on your darkest days, words you might have needed to hear for years, the certainty that someone, somewhere in the world, understands you. We don't do this for numbers. We do it for souls, for you, for all those silently fighting invisible battles. Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for opening your mind to this journey. Thank you for continuing, even with fear. We'll see you in the next episode. Until then, don't forget this. Your anxiety is not the enemy. It is the key that can lead you back to yourself. And in that return, we'll be here with you. Your voice matters here. Every reflection strengthens and uplifts our community, revealing the true value of each person and enriching our shared Stoic identity. The most supported reflection will be pinned as the banner of this community of Stoic minds. A community that doesn't run from pain, but walks through it with courage, with wisdom, with honor. Some decisions seem small, but change everything. If something inside you shifted while listening to this, don't ignore it. Subscribing is not just a click, it's a decision. The decision to stop living on autopilot. The decision to walk with awareness, with courage, with purpose. We'll see you at our next gathering in Stoicism for Winners, where we'll continue exploring the treasures of Stoic wisdom applied to modern life. Now, take the opportunity to go deeper into Stoicism with new recommended podcast sessions. Follow us so you never miss a reflection that might help you exactly when life feels overwhelming. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we publish episodes designed to support you when life feels heavy, when it's hard to stay calm, when you need a word to remind you who you are. Not following us is risking missing exactly the lesson that could bring back the peace you've been searching for. Until we meet again, remember, you are the sole owner of your perception, the creator of your peace, and the warrior of your own battle. This is the legacy of Stoicism, the art of being unbreakable.